Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where we look to empower and encourage real conversation amongst men everywhere by unpacking topics on self-help, philosophy, and business.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time of
Start that
the
again.
day. Why?
What do you mean? Did you fuck that up?
How did I fuck it up? Anyone could be listening to this at any hour of the day, depending on when they decide to tune in. Hello, everybody.
So old school, Conrad.
This is the Simple Minds podcast. As you can tell, I'm joined by the usual simpletons who've interrupted me on my intro. If you're a first-time listener, this is going to be a great insight to the show. My name is Justin Bourne, and today I'm your host. Today we're going to be talking about how do you handle pressure, how pressure is relative, and the importance of structures. I'll go around the room and introduce these interrupters to you. To my left, I have Mr. Matt J. Hannum.
Is that like a disruptor, like an interrupter?
Whatever you
I'll
want it
take
to be.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, mate.
Hi, JB.
We're all on his left.
Grump, yeah, everyone's on my left.
To his other right.
To my other,
To my left, to my left.
to the double right, I have Grumpy Pants Conrad.
G'day, people.
And then to my right, I have Hato. What's up?
I would prefer not be clumped with these clowns because I didn't actually interrupt you. So, but hello to everyone.
Oh, clumped.
That's very, very true.
What does clump mean?
Today we are going
What's on his head?
We're going on video today, so everyone can see this if you want to watch, and hello and all that jazz. Not sure what type of video content this is going to end up like, but we're going to give it a go.
Could get cut.
Yeah, probably. Might not even make the light of day. It'll take us 3 years to get it edited and up online.
We can't use profanities, or can we?
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Where are you posting it, mate? ABC? ABC Kids? You got a new deal we don't know about?
He probably does. For anyone who's new to the show and watching this for the first time, we do bring a drink to every show. I have a Kununga Hill Shiraz. It's a pretty good drop for its price range. This is kind of like a little bit of a when I can't be bothered selecting anything, we'll just grab from Penfolds. Yeah, thanks, Conrad. Forgot we are on the video.
You just told people we're on video.
That's right. I'm very focused right now.
So focused, he can't be bothered.
Yeah.
This is his can't be bothered drop.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure if we've had it on the show, so I thought
think we
I'd
have.
bring it along. Have we?
Nah, I don't think so.
I don't think we have. No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, cheers, lads.
Cheers.
I have the same drink.
You do not.
Well, he said he's got it. I've got the same drink, obviously.
Yeah, pre-poured in the glass. Smart ass. Made out a bit of pressure. All right, let's dive into today's topic. I was watching some hustle porn, as some may call it. I was also calling it Grow-to-tainment. I can't even say it. By Ryan Serhant, one of his vlogs recently, and the whole theme of the vlog was around how he handles pressure. Ryan Serhant is a successful real estate agent out of New York. He featured on $1 Million Listing. Matt and I have had the pleasure of having a little podcast and phone call with him. We're going to purchase a few hundred books. But it was a cool experience.
We supported his cause.
That's right. If you want a book, we might do a competition, but we'll leave that for another time.
Send it to conradfrancis.com.
Anyways, his vlog episode was about how we handle pressure, and I thought it was really relevant to myself and a few people around me in conversations as of late. And what I want to talk about today, lads, is I guess kind of how, everyone goes through pressure and overwhelm, and I think everyone handles it differently. And the other fascinating thing that I've been sitting with over the last few days in particular is how pressure is relative. In that, the smallest thing to someone is the biggest thing to someone else, and vice versa. And reflecting on the last few years, with myself in how situations occur today or last week or whatever, and they don't impact me as much as they used to probably 2 or 3 years ago, and kind of how we evolve with handling the pressure, and kind of how, through the structures that we build enables us to kind of go up another level in handling that. In saying that as well, I don't think, you can discount everyone, like, because pressure is relative, you can't discount certain individuals if they're at a low, I wouldn't say it's like a lower level, but a small thing is a big deal to certain people depending on the amount of work that you've done, I guess, on yourself and your perspective. So I think there's no right or wrong. What I want to kind of talk through today is just to hopefully give you, the listener, and anyone watching some insights into maybe acknowledging if you're under, some pressure and overwhelm, and maybe get even some practical value out of how the four of us here handle with overwhelm and pressure, because I don't think it ever really goes away. And trying to help identify the difference between, which may not fall in the same category, and we'll expand on this, I hope, pressure and stress, because I think as well you can be under pressure and not be under stress, and hopefully we can go into that a little bit. So first off, I guess I'd just like to maybe just go around the room and get from each of you, how do you define pressure, and how often do you think you kind of go into a state of overwhelm? Matt?
How do I define pressure? Probably very differently to the dictionary. How do I define pressure? Well, as in pressure versus stress, or just
just how you view pressure.
You're a simple question, man.
Yeah, you're a business owner, right? So you run a business, you've got a family, you've got many things going on, and so from one view, you might be considered under a lot of pressure. So how do you view pressure, and then how does that translate to overwhelm or not?
Well, I think pressure comes about when there's something new, or something that you just haven't got a handle on, or an unexpected event or situation or otherwise. I mean, when I find when the systems are just rolling in the business, I mean, those things don't, you don't see yourself under pressure there. Unless, say, for example, all of a sudden you get like 5x more the work comes through the door or something like that. So I think for me, pressure is, I guess, the barometer of the things that are not well enough systemized in the business, and often something that's not systemized will come back to land on me for a decision. If that happens over and over again or repeatedly in one particular period of time, then that's probably where it hits overwhelm and moves into a stress state. But I think there is no real difference between pressure and stress. It's just how your perspective sits on what you're looking at. I mean, you're always doing something or handling a situation. The question is it, are you perceiving it as a problem, or is it just something that's come to you and you're setting about fixing it?
Okay, interesting. Conrad?
All right, great question. I mean, because it's something that I wouldn't have thought there was too much differences with. I mean, I've since you brought it up, I've obviously had a look through what pressure versus stress is, and there is a difference. I believe pressure is more about you personally, and stress is of the environment that you're in. And so, people have said to me at different stages of my life that, it must be stressful doing what you do. And I've never really understood that because I've never seen it for what it is. And I think you can also acclimatise yourself to levels of stress because it's environmental. And so if you choose to step in a certain space, you are by default accepting the things that go with it. Whereas pressure, you do feel. And I think I do feel pressure. I don't really understand stress. And that's because I generally, as it says here, I've accepted the situations for what they are.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think there was an instance last week which you were part of the influence of getting me to think about pressure and stress, and that I had a realization, obviously we all spend a lot of time around each other in our businesses, that you're always under pressure, but it doesn't always seem like you're under stress.
Yeah.
And that as you level up in business, there's always additional pressures, and kind of like what you were saying, Matt, it seems obvious to me the more that stress is optional and it's a choice.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I mean, whilst I haven't differentiated it till today, it's important to understand the difference, because I guess and this is the English language and how we choose to use it, right? If we throw the word out stress when we're really referring to pressure, what are we allowing ourselves to understand and believe?
Yeah, because I think it's pretty common to go straight into, I'm so stressed out right now, which then, as we're talking through it, that's what contributes and leads to that state of overwhelm. So it's really interesting. Hader?
Sorry, Conrad, you were saying that stress is more your environment, but pressure is more within.
Yeah.
So I would have thought it was almost flip, because stress is your perception of the situation.
Well, that's so the other way around. So stress refers to the situation of too many demands and not enough resources, whereas pressure is the situation in which you perceive that something at stake is dependent on the outcome of your performance.
Yeah, because I've always thought pressure is an external force more so. Because
So you've got it the other way around.
Yeah.
Because stress is the external force.
Yeah.
Pressure is the internal force.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's exactly right.
See, I for me, I would have thought pressure was the external, whereas say business, there's external factors coming in on you, and then stress is internal, and it's how you deal and how you perceive the situation.
You choose to be in business.
Yeah.
So therefore, you accept the stresses of business, i.e., your time, money, energy, that stuff. So that's the environment. Okay,
Yeah.
Which is why I say I've never really feel stressed, because I've always accepted the role that I've generally been in. But within that role, there's pressure to perform, and that's personal.
Yeah.
Yep. And, we pre-planned, so we've got some really cracking episodes coming up, just as a bit of a drop. But we're going to be talking about Kobe in the next few. And it was interesting kind of doing a little bit of pre-work on that around how he felt pressure all the time, right? And it's kind of like what you're saying there. So he felt on that individual level the pressure.
Which is the performance.
Yeah, but he wouldn't necessarily, it's hard to say, and I'd be talking out of an assumption here that he may not have felt stress, because that wouldn't have allowed him to potentially perform.
But I guess based on the definitions as it's posed, we all know that Kobe also did the work.
Who posed this definition? Because I think I agree with Hader. I feel like it's the other way around, and certainly the way that I language that stuff too.
Yeah, because then that would flip me and go, well, I've felt pressure my entire business life rather than stress. I've never really felt like I felt stress. So I understand both sides of it. I just, my definition of it was the way I've said it.
So stress may involve a variety of problems that lead to feelings of overload. Okay, a meeting that runs late, a long list of emails that need responses, several looming deadlines. Pressure involves feelings often of anxious and fearful nature, of a do or die type situation. Now, there's a saying that pressure creates diamonds. Stress doesn't create diamonds, does it? Pressure does.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check.
I guess
it's language, really.
It
It's
is,
not-
but we say it's language, but it's always language.
Yeah.
No, I know, but in this case, I just think we're identifying the opposite word, really.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because like I said, if you're going to accept that pressure creates diamonds, what are you creating?
So that's saying that pressure has the ability to be external and internal, because it can't create diamonds if it's not external. But stress is 100% always internal, because it's the way you perceive it.
But you can put pressure on most things.
Yeah.
Okay. Not everything's going to turn into a diamond.
No. But if it's internal pressure, then you're not going to turn into a diamond. So it has to have
you can turn out diamond-like scenarios.
Yeah. But I'm just using it as like a logical time. You have to have an element of external and internal for pressure.
But the external is the stress. So the stress and how you deal with it creates the pressure, and then you deal with the pressure.
Yeah.
I think, the idea that you can be under pressure and not stress is kind of where some of that resonates as well. And I think, that comes back to your internal structures and how you have cultivated them, right? So you can have still, you could have low pressure on a situation and be highly stressed about it. And I think even coming back to Matt, where you started it seems that stress is ultimately a choice. And it's not an easy choice to make, but it's essentially how you're looking at that situation and what meaning and definition you're applying to it, which is what we've talked about, which is creating that internal. It's still internal, right?
Well, pressure's a choice as well. Because
Yeah.
if you're putting pressure on yourself to succeed, like Kobe put pressure on himself to be the best.
So he was
basketballer
one
version he
of
could.
the best, if not the best, game finishers in the NBA or something like that. He's hit the most game
Yeah,
winners.
36 over 20
Yeah.
years.
So that would be a stressful situation, which he accepted the situation, put himself under pressure, delivered the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So building off that, then, we're all business owners here. Haydo, do you want to? You just mentioned there running the business, and if we change those definitions, would change maybe how you'd view it, but. Has your ability to be able to handle certain levels of pressure and stress changed over time? And if you were to think about it, what would contribute to that? Give us some examples.
I remember when I was I was a kid. I used to put so much pressure on myself. I used to stress out about things so much that I'd actually make myself throw up, which is quite funny because Conrad's actually seen it. I think I've rocked up to Conrad's house when I was about 21, freaking out. Wait, can you just engage here? Right?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Please.
I don't even have people over my house very often, mate, so I do remember the moment.
I was throwing up in his front yard because I was stressed about the situation so much. It's something that I've learnt over the years, and basically it was just a question that I kept asking myself, like, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? And if it was a yes, then I'd continue worrying about it. But 99.9% of the time, the answer was a no.
And 100% of the time,
Yeah.
nothing ever matters.
Yeah, exactly. So
Nowadays, you know that, right?
yeah. So that was something that I've unknowingly worked on since I was very young, because that was a big issue for me. And as I'm getting older and more pressure and stress environments are around me, I'm having to go back to that. In terms of business, it's like what what's his name, Sir Hunt, was saying about creating routine. Having a look on the end result, having a focus on the end result. I think they're all tools that can help you, but it's also what works for you too. It's how you engineered. So like our friend Marco, we all love and dear Marco. He was one of the pioneers of this episode, and he's got to know all the information about the situation to then make a decision about it. I believe I'm more of a gut person, so. The way he would decipher and understand pressure and stress would be very different to me, and the way I use tactics or techniques. It's that's as simple as I can make it for me.
Yeah, but would you be able to say that you can handle more pressure now than what you would have done 2 or 3 years ago?
100%. Yeah. So
what do you think that is, other than asking yourself what's the worst case scenario? Because I think that's sometimes easier said than done for a lot of people.
I think it's a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
The more you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the more you're giving yourself an opportunity to grow and learn. If you're cotton wooling yourself, your entire life, then you have no opportunity to fail and no opportunity to, crack. What Sir Hunt say, if you crack, it's okay. You're just going to get another crack. So, I've failed many times in my life. I've not had breakdowns, but like I've gone, fuck, like I need a week off here, or I need a day, like I'm struggling, or what's happening, how can I reset what's going on? So it's giving yourself the ability to learn. You can't expect to go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's how it's cliched it is, it's the journey. It's each step of learning.
it's interesting. Like I think as I was reflecting on it as well, seems to be a direct correlation, between pressure and uncomfort and growth. So if you look back as into when there was the pressure there and the uncomfort, that's always been a growth opportunity. And it's kind of like, I guess, anything, you do it a couple times, you get a little bit more comfortable and confident with it, and you just build off that, like as a muscle, as you've suggested. And it's kind of that whole idea of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? But I think a lot of us, and I've been guilty many times as well, will not push through it. And I don't mean push through it in kind of like, steadfast approach, but we buy into, as we know, our beliefs and the other path, and we don't get the opportunity to get the learning or the growth out of it. And I think when you get in a hefty state of overwhelm, you'd be lying if you don't normally push through. So it's super interesting. So Conrad, the pressures, as we just talked about, how have they evolved for you over the last many years?
Like I said, mate, I still struggle understanding stress, although people will tell me that different ailments I've come across is a byproduct of stress. But I just don't assimilate with the word. Never have.
So just as a random question, do you ever feel overwhelmed?
Yeah. And I believe that's, I've accepted that is an acceptable feeling for the amount of work that I choose to do. So I'm in a constant state of overwhelm almost.
And so how have you been handling that, and how do you handle that?
Becoming more rigid with how I allocate my time. So I don't generally waste too much time. I mean, I don't watch any TV. I say anything. I don't watch any sitcom TV or any things like that. I say probably 95% of my time. And I'm dedicated to my reading time, and I don't spend a lot of time out socialising where I'm drinking a lot, where I've the next few days. So I limit my wasted time so that I can maximise my productivity. I've learnt that a long time ago, and I've gotten a lot better with it lately because I've had to, because I've asked more of myself again this year. And so again, to warrant the rewards of the time invested, then you've got to be more diligent. So I've accepted the stresses of the external environment. So the pressure is to deliver. So make use of the time I'm creating for myself.
And I think something that I've noticed of you, and whether this has just been through training, I noticed that you are pretty good at ensuring that stuff doesn't stay on you for too long. So
no,
we'll go through the tips.
Yep.
Hato kind of touched on it from Sahant's one, which is structure your day. But the next one is take care of the hard shit first.
Yep.
And so for you, was that, did you build up that skill, or has it just been something you've kind of always done?
I think I made a lot of mistakes to figure it out, mate. I mean, I say I never really engaged any coaches or mentors, but I had a lot of help along the way. A lot of people have picked me up and dusted me off when I've fallen off the wagon, so to speak. But take care of the hard shit first. I mean, that's scientifically proven to create the dopamine needed to go after the rest of the stuff, right? Most people cheat on it. Most people go the easy stuff first, and then get tired by midday. So, I start my days usually with hard stuff, but whether it be in the gym or in the office, I start hard because I want to put the muscles straight there.
Start hard, finish hard.
Put the
You
muscles
start
straight
hard.
there.
Put the muscles straight there in the gym.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Do you wake up hard?
you can laugh if you want to laugh. You can laugh if you want to laugh, guys.
In your Pilates
It's a
class.
science project, right? If you need...
Oh, it's a science project now.
It's a dead set science project. If you know that
Wake
putting
it
your
up,
body
mate.
in a physically stressed state is going to give you the dopamine to get through the day, then that's what you got to do.
Mate, you send about a text every 2 minutes in the gym.
Yeah. Anyway, I do what I can do, but I get my shit done. He saw me train the other day.
It's true.
Were you hard?
I don't know.
Get hard. Get hard training
Seriously,
session.
I'm going to smack all of you.
But
Tip 3.
tip 3,
Are we talking about tips now? Sorry.
tips.
I've got 3 tips.
I think getting rid of hard shit first is paramount. I've noticed I'll build up overwhelm by obviously sitting on things for way too long, and you realize a lot of the time that was like a 10-minute thing or that this or that. But I think that comes back to you slowly build up. Like emails that I had to send clients like 3 years ago, I'd be procrastinating on because I'm scared shitless of it. Now I wouldn't even think twice.
It becomes problematic though, can I be real honest with you? Because the small and easy stuff sometimes gets missed.
Yeah.
All right. And I've had to fix a situation today because something small got missed.
Oh, as you've gotten more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So because you're aiming to do all the big shit, you're fucking, great. Sometimes the small things get missed. So you got to make sure you just...
Triceps or...
They're not small.
Can we-
Look at these bad boys.
Can we ask Hannum a question? Because I think he's drunk.
No, I think I'll ask myself. I'll make a statement.
No, go for
How
it.
about that? No, I just
Invite
want
you to the table.
That's
About time.
Oh, mate, I thought your name was Jacob Moffat.
I look like Jay Moff. Oh, was he in this podcast? No, hi Joe. Hi Jacob. You make a really valid point, and I've definitely
Which
been.
one? I've made about 20 today and you haven't spoken.
If you, I mean, I haven't spoken. If you let me explain, Papa Smurf, that I've definitely experienced when in those overwhelmed states where you come in, you pick off a few easy things, and then you do get
Feel good about yourself.
you do get fatigued by say lunchtime, and then you'll realise 3, 4, 5 days later you've done the same bloody thing over and over again.
3, 4, 5 years later,
All
mate,
that
with the
too.
average person.
Yeah. But so I just wanted to really raise that again because that's a really valid point. And I get that you might let some small stuff drop off if you really are focused on the big, and you've got to have a balance. But I would urge people.
I forgot to re-register my business name.
Okay, I would call that a big thing, but
It's not a small thing.
you forgot to re-register it. Actually, I will say that.
I don't know why that's my job, by the way.
It's
but
a,
anyway,
it's a crap process.
Oh, it's a shit
they
process.
don't easily follow you up.
No.
It's not a very good process.
I better check mine then.
Yeah, you better check that out. But I'd urge people listening to think about
your
like
business
what are
name
they
registration.
check your,
Yeah,
firstly,
go out there.
check your business name registration. Just make sure it doesn't say voluntary administration next to your company name, and just what have you been lingering on? Because that when I'm in the state of overwhelm, that's what I'll do. Whether that's a couple of client emails, whether that's a proposal, whether that's a some other piece of work that hovers, it just gets delayed, and that's the pressure that builds up. And I find that when I have too many of those types of things start to build, that's when I'm really getting into my worst state, and that's when I'll have to start to do more. Like these are preventative tips, but that's when I'll have to start like doing drastic like saving measures by like go and spend some time at the beach, go and like float, go and do things that I need to
Spend some
do.
time with the ducks.
Go and spend some time with the ducks.
You say preventative. This to me is normal.
Yeah, but this
not,
is planning type.
Yeah,
This
okay,
is
okay,
ahead.
sorry.
I'm saying then I'll get into a position of overwhelm, which I'll have to go and take some deliberate action to get myself in a better space.
But then, but what will happen is if if you've got a structured day and you're not doing the hard stuff, then day 3 that structure falls apart. So your structure's not strong enough, and so I guess everything is kind of linked. It's like going to the gym first thing in the morning might be the hardest thing for you. Making that phone call might be the hardest. Whatever it is,
Whatever the hardest thing is,
whatever the
exactly
hardest
right.
thing is.
Because it's the hormonal impact you're chasing,
Yeah.
the feeling. And whether it's the gym or whether it's making the phone call or whether it's having the hard conversation with the client or the staff or the team member, whatever the toughest thing in that day needs to be done, get it done as early as you can.
And also just to cut in, but that's where you were going out with the conversation and some of the questions to Haydo is like, so in early days in business, the hardest thing you might have to do is to pick which workers' comp provider you're doing. Like, and then these are the types of, decisions that are very quick and easy 3, 5, 7, 10 years in because you're making other decisions. But whatever that is right in front of you at the time is just your hardest decision because you haven't necessarily done it before. And often we haven't in business. So whether it's picking an insurance company or, hiring that first staff member or, whatever that looks like, all these things do become
Make
easy
sure you
with
do that,
practice,
though,
right?
because that also costs money when you don't.
But it should.
Conrad's hit list of issues.
Yeah.
Again,
Small
it wasn't my
micros.
system. It
all
was
the-
fucking insurance.
all the key business shit you shouldn't forget about.
Yeah.
Well, you hire a broker and you expect them to remind you, and a month later they haven't. So
have
you
you-
self audit and you tell them, and they still give you a $4,000 fine.
I'm hearing some blame.
Yeah.
No, I'm
so
not
are
blaming.
you working on the big stuff? Or?
Actually, I agree with that. That's the whole broker thing. That's what you pay a broker for.
Yeah, you pay a broker for that. They get paid.
It is true. So
Don't worry, they got the $4,000 fee.
I think in terms of doing the harder shit first as well comes to self-awareness and acknowledging your current situation, what needs to happen as well, and then just building up the courage to do it. And I think, which we brushed over a little bit, the importance of structure in your day is
magnitudinal.
Paramount.
Number one, I mean, fuck. Before I walked in here today, 2 of my meetings were about how they're organising their weeks. You know, if you can't do that, then, you know, stay in bed. You don't deserve to breathe.
We told you Conrad was grumpy today.
We did. It did introduce him, Grumpy.
No, but shit, everybody wants something. But, you know, it's like going to the gym and saying, I'm going to go to the gym today and not have a fucking plan.
Yeah. And not doing the hardest thing first.
Get it done.
I really like the 1 kilo dumbbells.
We know, look at your arms.
I,
He's been using them since he was 2.
nuts in cotton.
So the other one, which I guess you know, the tips here is recommended of taking care of your mental health, which can be linked, I think, to both the first two of structuring your day and doing the hard shit. So, you know, getting good sleep, good habits, and having good people around you. So,
Sorry, do you not think that's a bit of a throwaway line?
What do you mean?
That one?
Reasonability.
Like, take care of your mental health. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
But
bit of
hey,
a.
people don't, man.
I don't know.
We're sitting
I don't.
in big issues with mental health at the moment.
Well, I agree with that, but like, I guess for him
This is
saying
not. This is not solid advice in that. Like
Yeah.
it's not
You're talking
actionable.
about,
right?
advice
Yeah,
from
it's not
seniors.
actionable. It's like, you know,
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure.
What do you do for your mental health?
structure in your day, and you
That
know,
will help you, but if you're structuring your day and you don't eat the right food or read the right material, you could be
Or
reading-
you're smashing like 10,000 coffees and then running off 3 or 4 hours sleep.
good point.
You know, because if you're running low on sleep, you're going to show up anxious, annoyance. That's only going to contribute.
not necessarily.
Yeah, Mr. Badge over there shining brightly. But you know, these things contribute to your mental health that sometimes you're not going to have the mental capacity to control because you're already doing disservice. So I don't know if I would say it's a bit of a throwaway line.
yeah, no, I agree with you. That's, I guess, in the broader aspect of, you know, not like an actionable thing. It's
Yeah.
just a broader.
'Cause it's like
it's
it-
a topic.
It's
It's a fucking big one.
Yeah, yeah.
Mental health's a massive one.
It's a huge
So
topic.
hang on, isn't this podcast about?
Yeah. But
This is my mental health check-in for the month.
you're
Well,
checking.
it's a weekly show, so
I don't hang out with you guys weekly, do I?
Well, how, you know, on that, why do you think it's? I mean, do you think it's important for managing pressure and overwhelm?
I
He's a
absolutely. I just more. I think Sir Hunt's probably, 1, goes for clickbait, and 2, like it's
He
just
definitely does.
It's just it's a bit
He's
of
a showman.
yeah, but it's a bit of like a throwaway line. Like this, he's giving all these actionable things here, and then one's like mental health, and it's like, well, what should you be doing for your mental health? I guess that comes back to
She's there. Good
everyone.
sleep.
Everyone ticks.
People around you.
I think that's Justin's notes.
They are a bit of my notes, but he does
Yeah.
talk about having good sleep, good eating habits. You know, surrounding yourself. He talks about in that particular line item surrounding yourself with the right people because you know he's
Mr. Sahant, that was Travis Hato that banged the shit out of you.
he's also a real estate agent in New York. He's not a fucking mental health coach.
Well, and that's why I say like I'm not disagreeing with the line. I 100% agree
full
with
of
it.
clickbait.
Right,
That's a personal slap in the face.
I 100% agree with what he's saying. But in terms of what he's saying is like tips. You know, it's very broad for a tip.
So if you put a blog out tomorrow saying Sir Hunt's dead, so will that be clickbait?
He's not likely to put a blog out, let's be honest.
No, he's not. That might waste paper.
He did try.
Someone might print it out.
So, I mean, on that, then, how do you manage, say, keep your mental health in check? What are your practical tips?
Well, it's all relative to you, isn't it?
Yeah, what are yours?
What I would do is I would listen to podcasts 1, 7, 9, 21, 23, 27, 28,
51,
40,
55.
52 of Simple Minds podcast.
Well, just give us a little synopsis if you're going to, you know, what's your take on it?
I think just take care of your mental health.
Mate, he's a goddamn hippie. He just hugs a tree barefoot, mate.
I think
If he needs an extra injection, he does it nude.
Just lick a few leaves and twist a few blades of grass. And
well, for me, like it's it all comes back to the same themes that we talk about. Practice gratitude, have self-awareness of where you are currently. Have a good routine in your day. Journal, all that sort of stuff that works for you. I think that all helps and contributes with my mental health. Communication, connection with not only trees but humans.
human trees.
Having a proximity
Christmas
with,
trees or
with
Tree
people
rollings.
around you. For me that's probably a few practical tips. But I think like for what we talk about in our themes, like you can probably tell we're almost up to 100 episodes here, and there's a lot of the same themes, and that's I think all to do with mental health and the way what makes us tick.
Contributes to mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, all of these tips, we've talked about all of these for the last 700 episodes. But, I think it's always reassuring and great to understand that, it's universal. And when other people out there clearly are succeeding and achieving.
Yeah, but okay, then we throw Jordan Peterson in the mix. Right?
Oh,
Something-
you wanna go to Peterson?
No, let's not.
No,
you know.
but,
let's
but,
go
no,
to
but,
Peterson.
but we say mental health is easy, but that bloke,
I didn't say.
It's
Sorry,
never easy.
I never
But I would
say it
have
was
assumed
easy.
he would, given the fact he makes his bed every morning, I would have assumed his shit was in order.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of frameworks, though, the philosophies, like these tips here, like these
Thank
are
God he
nothing.
didn't start with making his bed because he
They're-
didn't end up like Jordan.
They're nothing crazy out of the ordinary. And I kind of do agree it's probably a little bit of a throwaway. But, if you watch the episode, you'll talk, talk similar things. And I mean, what I'm saying is that the frameworks are very consistent throughout. So if you watch Gary Vee, you watch Ryan Sahan or Tony Robbins or whomever,
100%.
And even Jordan Peterson, whether he's doing it himself or not, some of the frameworks that he would have offered up,
Yep.
you
Agreed. I
know.
think, when you read enough about these people that have achieved something of any value in their life, and I say relative to what you'd seem as value, most of them are playing with the same ingredients,
yeah,
just different components
Yeah.
of the same ingredient.
Yeah, 100%, So, I think that for me, this has been super important because in the early days of business, I wouldn't sleep as much. I'd be smashing back the coffees and I'd notice, I'd be very anxious and snappy and all this type of stuff. And I look back at how I operated before and I was like, holy shit. And then the pressure is actually amplified when you're not in a good state. So like something that was small is magnituded out to 10 times because you're already fucking like pinging like off caffeine or lack of sleep. So, someone makes a silly remark and you're like, you react. Whereas if you're got your shit in order, someone makes a remark, you don't even notice it.
Well,
But I think that's
I think that's the golden nugget in this episode, to be honest, because it does amplify. It does, if you're in that shit state, everything's even worse.
yeah, so I might just jump in because for
Please
a couple
do.
of weeks
Jacob.
Now you know how we feel, Conrad.
for a couple of weeks I pondered
interrupt
a sharing another piece of content, to talk about it. And
What, earlier than you shared this piece of content?
Yeah, for about 2 weeks I thought about it, and I actually decided to pull out
And not
on
replace
that piece
with
of
any.
content. But what it was a video by Jack DeLosa, and
Jackie D.
friend of ours collectively, and runs the Entourage in Australia, which is a business community, a business consultancy.
Thanks for
I don't-
sponsoring this episode, Entourage. We'll send you the invoice.
Mate, Jack wouldn't pay it up.
Cash for comments.
But no, what I wanted to raise is he talked, and we know about some of the troubles that they had a few years back, where the Australian government pulled out on the funding that was going towards these education businesses, and he very quickly got himself into a position where he was 1 to 2 months away from having an $800,000 a month loss position, and he had to do a massive restructure. And he was talking about in this video how he just knew that they were going to survive, had just an intuition and a belief in everything, and was able to just attack that situation, which is a pretty deep, probably the deepest and biggest situation he'd ever encountered. And then he was talking about they solved that riddle effectively. I think they had to raise some capital and do some other things, whatever that looked like. But at that point, he was potentially about to lose the house that he has his mum living in, and impacted family and business. Several months later, he had a relatively small blip of a problem, and he was in a position where it was just insurmountable. He couldn't even foresee how they would make it out. And compared to that previous problem, it was nothing. And he was talking a lot about your level of resilience and how much you've actually built up this mental health and your current state. And I thought that I didn't actually want to bring the topic because I wanted to dig into more of and bring more around the resilience, which we have talked about a little bit, but I think that's a much bigger topic to talk resilience. But I think that's what we're getting at here is even, if you're 10, 15, 20 years in business, sometimes even a little thing can derail you a little bit if you're just not on your game. If you haven't, looked after those small things, if you haven't got your, you can easily take your eye off the prize, I think, so to speak, as well. And that was another great example of a situation that was maybe less than 5% of as big a problem as the previous one was, but he just wasn't in a position to be able to cope, and he had to go and reset himself and I think his answer was to get away for the weekend and get out in the mountains and detox and detach and
nature.
And that was go and see Hato out there in the trees, but that was his process. He had to step away from it to come back and solve it. But it was a minor problem from what he's dealt with before. So I thought that's I think also key, and I do find myself in that situation. Sometimes a small thing is derailing you, and you just got to stop for a minute and take a break and get back and go, that's nothing. That's something I've dealt with 40 times.
Within the context of most things, it's always nothing, right?
Yeah, well, that too.
It's the power you give away versus the power you retain. So, JB, can I pose this differentiator between stress and pressure, and see what you think? I'm not sure how much time we've got left.
Yeah, we're going to be closing out shortly.
Okay, well, this is probably not a bad one to look to close with. to help you.
Yes,
hone-
boss.
If he doesn't say so himself.
Yeah.
Well, I'm given that the topic started the way it did, and you wanted to do your eulogy to fucking Jack Delosa.
Well, before
Is he dead?
Maybe we could use it as a eulogy if you wanted to.
all right, I'll ask away the
Clickbait,
question,
mate.
and then I'll whether I'll answer it or just wrap out the other two and finish off with that.
Okay,
Fire away.
So here's something to help differentiate between the two. If you feel the heat of the situation, ask yourself
come on.
if
Are you making this up?
if you're feeling overwhelmed by the demands upon yourself, or do you feel that you have to produce a specific result? If your answer is the former, a feeling of being overwhelmed, too many demands and not enough resources, you're stressed. If you are in a situation or entering one in which you feel you have to deliver the goods, that's pressure. And whatever Matt Hannam wants to think is different is for every other Muppet.
Have you got something to say? How do you explain that?
Does that make sense? Was that clear?
It makes sense. It's language, and I would agree. It's language I've never looked at that way. I've used the opposite terminology.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious in that's the way when you lay it out that way. Whether again, the way you've defined pressure or stress yourself may vary, but it makes sense. And a lot of the time, the stresses that are there are for external factors. Like a lot of these things is because the fear you're going to be judged or you're not good enough, or coming from, as we know, a lot of our limiting beliefs, which are generally external, seeking for external validation, and that's what creates a lot of stress. So I don't do this thing, or so and so is going to think X, Y, and Z about me, or this or that, and I could see where a lot of those that could go down that path. And I think you're Sorry.
But it is important to be clear with your definitions, because you're going to be managing people or teammates or family or friends to those.
I agree, because one of the things, which is part of why I brought this up, was we do a team survey using Office Vibe, which I think we all do here. And the funny thing was like, one of the questions like, is your workload reasonable? All green light. But are you stressed? And it was just like, yeah, stressed. And it's like, okay, well, all right, let's have a conversation around what's, how can the workload be reasonable but you're stressed? And so then it's a conversation of like, well, is the peers around you or even myself causing that stress through your assumptions on the expectations that are being put on you? Which is feeling like you've got to then, perform to that certain level rather than putting yourself under pressure and not feeling stressed. Because
exactly.
I equate the pressure piece to a philosophy that we haven't really talked in too much around creative tension. When you're under creative tension, you're actually under pressure and/or uncomfort.
Yeah.
And the more that you can sit in that space, the more magic you're going to create. And so I think, trying to acknowledge where you are under stress, because then if you can take that time out to take a step back and look at the situation differently, you can go back into it and reassign. Maybe it's as simple as that. Reassign whether you want to give the energy to the stress or you want to give the energy to putting the pressure on to perform.
I think that's a good other topic though for you next time to bring up.
Yeah, potentially. It's a good way of
how to respond to those two things.
Yeah, and I think for anyone listening and watching now, if you're feeling stressed out, maybe take a step back and try to find out, okay, is it coming from external? Actually, that's really interesting because if you're feeling really stressed or overwhelmed, we've always recommended.
The penny just dropped.
Yeah.
All the way at 59-minute mark. 58
minutes. We recommend journaling a lot. It's not on Sir Hans tips, but I would be sure that we could recommend it as, we could add that as a tip. When you're reflecting and if you're feeling under stress, would be asking the question of like, externally, what am I trying to, validate or meet? That, could be an interesting thing to help you identify what's causing the stress. So that's really interesting, and I'm glad we got to talk about that. Just to wrap out, tip 4 was focus on the end goal. By planning, I reckon we could have a debate about whether to plan or not. So we will.
Are we going to debate it?
Just gloss over that one.
Yeah, we'll gloss over that. That's clickbait, right? No.
I don't believe in it.
I think super important to maintain focus on the end result and vision. There's a couple episodes back we did, which was the live one, which is a cracker of an episode, some live Q&A. We talk about positive vision, negative vision. Go check that out. So focus on the end result. And tip 5, I think, is super important, which you touched on. I think at the end of the day, everyone, no matter who they are, will experience, whether they are Gary Vee or Sahant, they'll
Humpty Dumpty.
Jordan Peterson,
Humpty Dumpty.
Hey, Kobe cracked.
Everyone's you're gonna have a moment. You're gonna crack.
I haven't yet.
You crack all the
cracked,
time,
mate. You crack all the time. You cracked 40 minutes ago.
Allow it to happen, accept it, and then move on.
You're a fucking cracker.
I think on the cracking piece, we've got to crack it open. If I can add, it's like this comes back to the importance of surrounding yourself with good people that will give you shit about it. No, that will help you, that you can go to, right? I think it's super important that if you feel like you're about to crack or you do crack, you have a great support network and people out there. And also to show self-compassion towards yourself, that you're your biggest kind of critic when you crack as well, which has probably caused it for you to blow up anyway. But offer yourself some self-compassion and self-love. I think that's super important, which loops back to, I think, mental health as well, being able to forgive yourself.
Well, I think asking for your support network to help you is actually the hardest part of it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, gentlemen. That
Wrap this up.
wraps us out. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Not a bad drop, the old Kununga.
Yeah,
Yep.
good job.
It was a good
a
drop.
great review. Not one of us said a word.
We're just straight into it.
We
Straight
just
up,
sat there
straight
and
into
we
it.
just
Mate,
looked at
it's a
it.
Penfolds. It's play with a straight
Can't go
bat.
wrong.
Nothing exciting.
That's
It delivers.
Cool.
Happy
Thank you.
days.
We're done.
Hard muscle.
Peace.
Thank you.
Wow.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Simple Minds podcast. If you like our show and want to know more, then check out our website at simplemindspodcast.com. If you like, you can even leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or share this episode with a friend. The Simple Minds podcast is also on Facebook, Insta, and for those that like to keep things formal, LinkedIn. So follow us there if you want to keep up with the latest updates from the show. See you next week.